Coffee, according to UN's Food and Agriculture Organization FAO, is one of the most widely consumed beverages in the world and one of the most traded commodities globally. The commodity crop trades among mineral resource commodities such as crude oil and gas, gold, iron and phosphates. The irony is that while resource commodities like oil or minerals have transformed economies around the world, this does not apply to commodity crops like coffee and wheat. In Uganda, like across other developing economies in sub-Saharan Africa, South America and Southeast Asia that rely heavily on agriculture, coffee farming is a labor-intensive activity accounting for 70% of total cost of production, hence being key in rural poverty reduction. Hedad Mulindwa is a model coffee farmer in Rakai district and the Kochi Chiefdom Minister of Agriculture who embraced coffee farming in 2009.
I farm 30 acres. Some of my colleagues farm 15 acres, 10 acres, or 7 acres. So during harvesting, we bring our output together. We sell as a cooperative society, and after, say, 4 months, we get an additional fee they call a premium. Say if you sold coffee for 150 million shillings, the premium might be 5 million shillings. It is through these cooperatives that we galvanize ourselves to produce the desired output, educate each other, and also advise each other on coffee-related business, from farming, harvesting, and drying out.
His farm occupies 30 acres and earns 150 million shillings per harvest. He, however, like many farmers around the country, is concerned about the government's desire to create a monopoly in the coffee sector.
What government needs to do is to find more ways of how we can add more value to the locally produced coffee. We think if that is done, a kilogram of coffee can fetch up to 20,000 shillings. But in doing so, adding the value, this process must be competitive. There must be a dozen soluble plants where farmers are comfortable selling, depending on the prices they offer. Having a single soluble plant is not a good idea, and one that will set back the gains we have made in the industry.
Ebiguledinga nebikola kaawa kati ngemwanyi yaffe eva wano nga tugitunda bweru.
Personally, I don't agree with the idea of having a single buyer. Having a single player means we are slaves to his whims. We sell to their price. Competition is a healthy thing and we think it should be left that way. You see, right now we have several exporters like Chagalanyi and others. When one treats you bad today, you don't get back the next time. That has helped us a lot.
At Chikakata village, a backwater in Rakai district, coffee continues to provide sustenance to families and communities. Once harvested, the farmers individually or as groups dry the coffee beans from where they take the produce to processing factories. The advent of cooperative groups has specifically helped farmers to bargain for better prices, challenge individual farmers to maintain quality, and keep up with the output. According to Uganda Coffee Development Authority, the statutory body mandated to regulate and oversee coffee growing in Uganda, there are 753 coffee milling factories in the country. These trade with exporters such as Chagalanyi, which commands 18% market share, Ugacoff, Ideal Quality, Olam Uganda Limited, and Kawacom, among others. The country's top coffee grades, Organic Robusta and Screen 18 Fair, according to Uganda Coffee Development Authority, trade at $2.02 or 7,000 Uganda shillings per kilogram and $2.23 or 8,300 shillings per kilogram respectively, not adjusted for inflation. President Museveni and his technocrats at the Ministry of Finance recently threw this entire value chain in turmoil with a plan to create a monopsony, a market situation in which there is only one buyer and one which comes with imperfect market conditions. The first maneuver was in form of establishing the shadowy Uganda Vinci Coffee Company Limited UVCCL, overseen by the controversial Italian investor Enrico Pinetti, who has so far failed to deliver on the much-vaunted specialized hospital project along Entebbe Road. Pinetti, whose firm was supposed to establish a 296 billion shillings coffee processing plant, was earlier on supposed to construct a $440 million, about 1.6 trillion Uganda shillings coffee factory, for which 25 acres of land was allocated in Namamve Industrial Park. However, like many others, this project remains a white elephant. After the Daily Monitor lifted the lid on the controversial deal in April, which in effect sought to place the coffee sector into the hands of an individual, a parliamentary probe recommended for its immediate termination.
That in light of the violations of the various laws as highlighted above, the agreement executed between the government of Uganda and Uganda Vinci Coffee Company Limited is unconstitutional, illegal, void, ab initio, and unenforceable at law.
While defending their decision, lawmakers on the probe committee opined that the NRM had adopted the neoliberal structural adjustment programs in the early 1990s, which lifted state control over the coffee sector. As soon as Parliament torpedoed the Vinci deal in a bipartisan vote on May 19th, the Executive and Finance Ministry attempted to clothe the deal with another veil and resurrect it. On July 14th, Uganda Coffee Development Authority published an advert calling for expression of interest for the provision of transaction advisory services for the establishment of a soluble coffee processing plant in Uganda under a public-private partnership. The deadline for the bid submission is 25th of August 2022. This plan, officials say, is to establish a 20 billion shillings soluble plant with annual capacity of 6,000 tons to process the coffee beans Uganda currently exports into final powder ready to consume. Such schemes continue to threaten the stability of the local coffee farms.
Vinci deal, we were very categorical that the deal was dead ab initio at the very beginning, and it was illegal, it was not legally tenable and enforceable, and we rejected the deal. We are struggling, but we are hearing that they said we recommended a review. Parliament was categorical for cancellation, for rejection.
And that was all a scheme. The scheme to create monopoly around Vinci. Vinci, now we know that it is something that didn't exist, was just the wish of the president. Somebody has no idea on coffee, somebody has nothing to do with coffee, and then you say, I'm giving you monopoly over the highest, stage 18, over the highest, the highest quality of coffee in the country. That was a whole scheme, because coffee is the second highest export earner for Uganda. And when you have a country run by mafias, they are always scheming at where the money is. The money is in coffee.
The top coffee exporting countries in the world are Brazil, which holds about 35% of the export market, followed by Vietnam and Colombia. A June 2022 forecast by the Brazilian Coffee Exporters Council details that the South American country exported 39.5 million coffee bags to over 121 destinations between the financial year 2021 and June 2022, which fetched an estimated $8.1 billion, about 30.3 trillion Uganda shillings. Vietnam, according to the country's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, during the first months of 2002, exported 889,900 tons of coffee and raked in $2 billion, about 7.2 trillion Uganda shillings. Nearly all the world's largest coffee-producing countries export over 80% of their top-quality grade coffee beans, ostensibly for foreign exchange earnings, and then import undergrade coffee beans, including those which are processed at home. Vietnam and India, the seventh largest coffee producer, according to the Uganda Coffee Development Authority, UCDA, are among the export destinations in Asia for Uganda's coffee. Uganda is the top exporting country in Africa and whose total coffee production recently represents about 5% of the global production. Exports worth 6.26 million bags in financial year 2021-2022 fetched $862 million or 3.2 trillion Uganda shillings, up from $559 million or 2 trillion shillings from exports of 6.1 million bags in the financial year 2020-2021. Ethiopia is, however, the top producing country on the continent whose coffee is consumed locally. In stark contrast, President Museveni and some of his technocrats are convinced that it is more economic to process most of the locally produced coffee and then sell it across the world. There is, however, yet a published detailed study of the feasibility of such an undertaking other than projections of how much the coffee could fetch at the international market. This export model requires exporting rights, cost of processing and packaging for the different international markets, international marketing, and the onerous cost of doing business locally, which means that the processed coffee would have to be sold at a profit for the scheme to make economic sense. Ministry of Finance referred NTV to the President for a comment on the matter, but this is what the President said in an address last month.
So we are now getting $800 million, and we could get almost 10 billion. That's what you are saying.
Yes, but that means we have to, we assume we will transform all our coffee we are producing by value addition. We drink the coffee here, and part of the coffee we export.
Yeah, but you can export. You can export even if you don't drink it. Yeah, if they will buy it, can they not? Why would they not buy it if it's processed here?
Your Excellency, there are issues to do with good manufacturing practices.
Earlier on, President Museveni, during his State of the Nation address on June 7, 2022, defended the Pineti deal.
With coffee, I tried so many groups. Nescafe, Nestle, Tata. There is a Ugandan called Banya. I helped him to do ban coffee, ban cafe. Star Coffee. I tried to work with the Tanzanians in Bukoba to no avail. All these I've been trying them. When I met Madam Pineti, the one you have been attacking, she had no idea about coffee. It is not her. She had no idea about coffee. I, however, could see that she had a wide network of contacts. I asked her to look into coffee. After some time, she came back with a positive report that it was doable. I am the one who told her. She didn't. For her, she was in hospitals. Therefore, those attacking that project are supporters of Okenenura.
Now officials are justifying the new scheme on the premise of value addition in line with the policy blueprint, the National Development Plan. While agro-industrialization is noted as a blueprint for economic transformation, in Uganda's case, a 2019 study titled Agro-Industrialization in Uganda, Current Status, Future Prospects and Possible Solutions to Pressing Challenges by the research think tank International Growth Center pointed to a worrying lack of policy coordination, an ineffective enabling environment, significant underutilization of agro-processing units, and a lack of agricultural statistics which hamper government and private sector planning of the sector. There is no feasibility study to back up the plan government intends to roll out.
I think the coffee farmers and investors have always been on their own, with a little cooperation from Uganda Coffee Development Agency. It's important to note that in the last budget, government had planned to give zero money to the Uganda Coffee Development Agency. It's only Parliament which insisted that there should be a budget line for UCDA. So I'm sure the coffee farmers will continue to act on their own. Some of them export coffee using their own channels and networks. They will act on their own.
Well, look, first of all governments in the world must have the function to regulate any kind of economic activity. There must be regulations, laws must be passed. But then what we say all the time is that government should consult the stakeholders. For example, when they introduced the coffee bill, the Minister for Agriculture came here after I had raised the red flag. I don't know why they didn't start by coming here, because we are big stakeholders. They proposed imprisoning people for abandoning their coffee farms. That's ridiculous. Or even telling people to go and line up at the Gombola headquarters to be registered so that they can grow coffee. So even if they're not, you know, they're not motivated by some bad intentions, I mean, the way they carry out the process can make people conclude as such.
According to Uganda Coffee Development Authority, the bulk of Uganda's coffee exports are produced in the central region. In 2016, the Kingdom's Katikiro, Charles Peter Mayiga, sounded a clarion call to communities in Buganda to hit growing coffee to eradicate poverty. Mayiga said that the people's suspicions are justified.
Because no stakeholders has been consulted. Look at the Vinci Coffee Agreement. I'm not aware of a single coffee exporter who was talked to. The people who trade in the business were not talked to. Of course, we were not talked to. But you bring a company and you say they're entitled to free land, they don't pay taxes for 10 years, they don't pay electricity, they don't pay NSSF. How will that company compete with other players in the field? They are going to determine the price of coffee, so if it is so low, other people are going to get out and the industry will die. I don't know the motives behind all these things, but definitely the way they've handled it is below par, especially because they don't consult the stakeholders.
Other coffee growing sub-regions are against the monopoly. There is fear that creating a coffee monopsony is akin to the sugar sector, which is firmly in the hands of sugar barons who have created a slave-master relationship between their farms and communities.